Israel must be wiped off the face of the earth. You can forget that.
On this stage, that's more pro-Israel than I am.
Love Israel. I'm very pro-Israel. My name is Donald Trump, and I'm a big fan of Israel.
I want to thank my Jewish daughter.
I will meet with Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Okay, I think we got the idea there. Welcome, everybody. It's Saturday night, and we have our special guests here, Aaron and Jackie. And our topic here is pro-life, and we're going to connect some dots and talk about geopolitics and sort of make sense somewhere between what's going on in the world and what's going on with domestic policy. Before I begin, Aaron, I know you have your mic off there. How you doing?
All is well, as we discussed. Had a very productive day. I'm growing the biker stash in protest of civil. So I've gone back to shaving, but not this.
You're ahead of the curve. You're ahead of the fashion curve. Jackie, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm excited. I'm thankful that you invited me into this, and hopefully I can add a little something. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, Jackie, she didn't grow her mustache, so I'm a little. I did my part. She didn't do her part, so nothing hanging.
So how this began is Aaron sent me a video. He's been thinking about the abortion issue a lot, sent me a little video. We'll play that, but we'll maybe, hey, Katie, we'll wait till a couple other people pop on to do that. So what we're going to do is kind of just play a couple videos and go around the horn and do some comments, connect some dots. And we'll probably wait with the abortion one. And we have Jackie and I share a certain channel that we like, a geopolitics channel. And so he was doing, we think, a very objective rundown on foreign policy, geopolitics generally, but about the nominations for some of these key cabinet positions. And he's just pretty objectively looking at the background on some of these figures. So we'll also be playing some of that. And I guess we see some people. Hello, Carrie, Amanda, White Wolf, he's back. Okay, let me kind of begin with a little bit before I play any videos. We'll get a couple people in here, but just the general idea here. In fact, I'll even try to put it up on the screen, but well, let me just say it. I guess a number of people did watch the video that I did this week. I apologize. I had a few hours to get it in. I'm not trying to be that guy, but I do have a busy schedule. I'm a full-time lecturer at the college and whatnot, and I had the block. And there's some muted parts. I have no idea why it happened. Something happened, but people seem to like it nevertheless. It was very disappointing that happened. But yeah, the general idea is that in the empire of spectacle, it wants to pull you into this force. And this force does have an interconnected and underlying agenda. So we kind of want to point that out. And that's the purpose of the channel and the books. And really get people considering there's something that's kind of hard. A, that there's an agenda, and B, that a lot of what we get in media is scripted. And that's hard for certain layers of reality. In most of the social world, they take the stories at face value. So what I just said, I think it's about time we have to be that guy that says, I think a lot of these are, PSYOP level stuff, but to what end and where are they going? So I say there's big two general movements: Fourth Industrial Revolution, and that includes what we could call the Internet of Things. It's really going under the skin. So bear that in mind, under the skin. Ultimately, I would say there's two big things with the fourth industrial revolution, with the agenda generally: blockchain and Noahide. In other words, singularity and Noahide. So there's two sort of parts of this. And I guess I don't have to go into it too much, but one of the general ideas I'm going to go with is I think a lot of Catholic people, and I've been thinking this for a couple of years now, especially with the Catholic media complex, really gets you into this you're corralled into this single pro-life abortion issue. And I really think it needs to be connected with American foreign policy. So one of the issues we talked about in this, in order to kind of bring about this agenda, it's really based on an image, and we kind of go into the typology of that. But in the spectacle, image takes precedent over the fact. And Jackie broke down a video over on Locals. We'll do the Locals link this week. These typologies go back to the garden. You have the word, the revelation, versus the shiny thing over here that wants to conquer death another way. So one of the things I'd suggest is like Roe versus Wade. It's constantly, you're being told Trump, the judges, it was a victory. Objectively, when you look at the facts, and I can get into some of this later, that's just not true. With the research, development, the numbers, it's just not true. And then I really do want us to connect that with the foreign policy. And if we get time, I don't think we're going to do that long of a podcast, but I really think with the spectacle generally, there's a demonic component. But I think with the whole social media process and the impending under the skin technology, which includes fetal matter, all these things are connected, has a demonic ontology. So I don't want to overstate that. Jackie, where do you think we should begin? Should we do one of these, kind of get started with a foreign policy video, do you think?
Yeah, let's do that. That
Okay.
sounds good.
Okay. And this has been bumping around the news. So a lot of people have heard, and these are, so far, they're nominations. In some cases, they might put out a more extreme nomination and reel back a little bit, but you'll get the idea that this is what you call your typical deep state kind of thing that have been there for every administration, advancing the policy of American empire. And so you're going to hear that kind of American empire lingo here. So I am going to, I'm going to get this guy started a little bit, and it'll give us a little something to chat about.
Marco Rubio has many supporters of Donald Trump claimed that he would resist war and he would be a peace candidate. Well, now that Trump has won the U.S. election and has announced who will be the secretaries in his cabinet who will oversee numerous U.S. government ministries, we can see that without exception, they are all war hawks, and many of them are neoconservatives. So this shows how the neocon consensus in Washington continues. It doesn't matter if it's a Democrat or a Republican in the White House. This extreme pro-war foreign policy is continuing. First and foremost, Donald Trump has selected as Secretary of State Marco Rubio, the king of the neocons. He is a textbook example of a neoconservative. Marco Rubio has supported every single major U.S. war since he's been a politician, and he has constantly pushed for new wars. He called for the U.S. military to invade Venezuela. He supported the war in Libya. He supported the war in Syria. He supported bombing Syria, bombing Yemen. He wants to attack Iran. I mean, this is the exact opposite of a peace candidate. And he will now be overseeing the U.S. State Department, helping to create U.S. foreign policy. For his defense secretary, Donald Trump nominated another neocon, Pete Hegseth, who also is a pundit on Fox News. For his CIA director, Trump nominated John Ratcliffe, who's a neocon and an extreme China hawk. For his national security advisor, Donald Trump has named Mike Waltz, who is a neocon and an extreme China hawk. For his ambassador to the UN, Trump nominated another neocon, Elise Stefanik, who's an extreme far-right pro-Israel activist who's viciously anti-Palestinian. And I should point out that it's basically certain and guaranteed that all of these neocons that Trump has nominated will end up being the heads of their various government departments, because in order for...
Okay, that's a little bit for us to get started. One of the things as we keep going, he's going to show little clips of these people on, whatever, various foreign policy venues, Fox News, etc. What to me is startling, not so far, I think this just sounds like stuff you've maybe heard throughout the week, but what it seems is in the works, and this is shocking, is a simultaneous war on China, Russia, and Iran all at the same time. And this is just shocking. Your average American is not walking around thinking, I want to go to the war with the whole world. And so I'll come around and, I know what Aaron's going to say. We talked about this yesterday. Why in the world? Because the excuses they're given all of a sudden, like we're supposed to all of a sudden, how they manufacture these wars. They have to build up consensus for these things. This is the new boogeyman. So out of the blue, you're going to see information now. We're supposed to hate China and Russia and Iran at the same time, like kind of manufacturing this axis of evil. If there is this ultimate power, which we argue on this channel, this cabal, what could be the agenda in getting any country to want to take on think about it, multi-front war at the same time? I'll go to you, Aaron, first.
What surprised me is I was talking today with a friend of mine. She runs the 40 Days for Life here in our diocese on where we live, and she was very excited about Trump, and I informed her. I said I didn't vote, and she was like heartbroken, and started talking about these, China and what he's going to do about that, and I said, why do you think China is bad? And she said, well, they took all of our jobs and all of our. I said, no. I mean, not the specifics. I said, why do you think that they're bad? And she paused, and it was great. I said, because you were told that they're bad. I mean, I don't trust China for anything, and they're a desperate state, and so I'm not defending them, but it's just the thought process. I said, everything that you know about China has been told to you. I mean, it's a terrible country, but do we need to go to war with them? And she's like, yeah, I see, but this like you said, it's about the spectacle that everyone out there is kind of looking at this and seeing these pics that are be brought into the cabinets, but they're still just participating in what's being told to them, and they walk away with this idea and without ever asking, why do I think this?
Yeah, let me warm this up for you, Jackie. I know you already want to go, but
That's okay.
I remember 2022. I was living in New York City, and they're getting everybody out of the 1970s and the 1980s. When I was growing up, it was MASH and all these anti-Vietnam wars, and everybody on the left hated war. And when the Bush administration, because it was okay they were these bad people that wanted war, there was a parade so big by the fact that we might go into a war with another country at all, just to consider it. And that was the job there, whether it was Afghanistan, is to kind of get people over the Vietnam complex. And I think we've come to a point on the left and the right, I think it's almost worse on the left, that our consciousness is so seared that because it's key picture here is death. Like if you can we're going to show a fetus in a second, you can kind of think it here, but you can't see that it's a culture, it's an empire. And that's the fundamental animating component. It's death and profit. And yet we can get people to think, just disconnect everything at Walmart's from China, but now they're the bad guy. Like what? And on and on. But go ahead, Jackie. I know you've thought about this a lot this week.
So I do agree a lot with Aaron. I see this like patriotic attitude, and this kind of happened with Trump in the very beginning when he first got elected, is this huge idea that war is something patriotic with America. And there's so many people who bought into this idea that Trump knows how to handle foreign relations, and at one hand think he's going to stop wars, and on the other hand, they're very excited that he's going to be really good for war. It's like a very odd thing. Like there are two things going on here. And I'm kind of in the spectrum of military, seeing that my son was in the military, and I kind of get that mentality of patriotic war and where these people are coming from. But if you want my opinion, with knowing what my son has said, with 3 wars they want to try to get us into, he's like, when he was in the military, he says, our military is way far from being ready for even 1 war. And he was in the military. So
yeah,
that's a thing.
yeah, classically in geopolitics, I don't want to use the word Illuminati. I'll call them the cabal. When they want to break a country, they make sure it's on a multi-front war. That's just a formula. So that's the first thing my mind said. And people don't get that you're about to be destroyed and probably invaded. And so they're getting the hype. They create the problem of the borders, both problems. Go down there, monkey things around in Africa and Argentina, Venezuela, create the problem, then give them the money to come up here. They didn't really probably want to come up here. So problem, reaction, solution from the establishment. And so it was so patently poorly done by design in the last administration. Now he's going to come into this hard hitter going, I'm going to take care of that border. And so you're linking these things like something's actually going to be done. And, they're not going to be eating our cat. So they want you to psychologically link that so that the war is connected in a positive way in your mind. And I think that's what's going on. JFK is going to get us healthy. Like suddenly the pharmaceutical industry cares about our health. That's their main, means of profit. Let's play it just a little bit more. And then I think we got enough people in the house. We can swing over to the abortion.
For a secretary in the cabinet to be officially appointed, they have to get the approval of the Senate, and the Republican Party won a majority in the Senate. So that essentially guarantees that all of Trump's picks will end up being the secretaries in his cabinet. And again, I need to stress, all of them are neocons. All of them are war hawks. And in particular, all of them are extremely anti-China. And they're going to push for more and more aggressive policies against China, significantly heating up the new Cold War against Beijing. Now, I have emphasized constantly here that the new Cold War against China is bipartisan. And let's not forget that in Trump's first term, he started a trade war against China. And Donald Trump voluntarily surrounded himself with many neocons. His Secretary of State and former CIA director was Mike Pompeo, a neocon. His national security advisor was John Bolton, another neocon and one of the architects of the Iraq War. And they carried out an extremely aggressive policy against China. Mike Pompeo basically called for overthrowing the Chinese government. And even though Pompeo and Bolton are not coming back in Trump's second term, because Trump considers them disloyal because they publicly criticized him, it's not because Trump is against the neocons. On the contrary, he's replaced Bolton and Pompeo with people who have the exact same neoconservative politics. Mike Waltz, John Ratcliffe, Marco Rubio, they agree with Bolton and Pompeo on basically everything. So this idea, this absurd idea that Donald Trump was going to resist war is nonsense. The only war he may actually end is the war in Ukraine. But why is that? If you listen to his rhetoric, if you listen to the neocons he's appointed, all of them say the same thing. They say, we should reduce tensions with Russia in order to carry out war on China. In fact, another person who's going to have a top position in Donald Trump's government is the former Republican presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy. And his entire foreign policy narrative that he campaigned on is that the U.S. should break the partnership between China and Russia in order to wage war on China. This is their narrative. None of them is against war. All of them want war on China, but what they say is that they're against war on Russia.
Okay. Wow. That's a little bit crazy. I don't know. I'm good with that. I think we got the basic ideas. I just really wanted to hit home that this has been going on over the last several months under the radar. Both political parties have been pushing anti-tariff measures in China. They want to foment a war with China. And I don't think anybody can even begin to get their heads around that. and Russia and Iran at the same time. I guess we're repeating ourselves. Aaron, do you want to, before, I think we'll go over to your clip. Aaron, do you have anything you want to jump in and say?
I think the big thing that people should be asking themselves whenever they're looking at supporting war with any country is what is the specific defense of American citizens, not American interests, because American interests are generally financial, and those are where you get into the oligarchs. So what does it benefit a common average American with regards to security? Because I think, I've looked at it objectively, trying to, and please someone correct me if they think I'm wrong, but I think the only two wars that we fought that were legitimate, that had just cause, would be the War of 1812 and probably the Civil War, but that would be on the southern side, not in defense of slavery necessarily, but for the Federalist incursion. But you can't really say that without being called a racist. But that's not the point.
Right.
The point is the cause for war. So we have never fought a war other than those two. Those are the only two wars that I can think of that we could legitimately say we're defending American citizens. So that's my point with people in the discussions when we talk about this is, why do we have standing armies? Why do we have this large military, and who benefits from it? And it's, to my experience, and I always get annoyed when someone says, "Thank you for your service." I'm like, for what? Well, who did I serve? You tell me who I served, and then we can go from there. Yeah. So just look at that. Look at what is the defense of American citizens, not American interest.
Jackie.
Yeah, I agree, Aaron, and I like that you brought in just war, because I think we as a people have gotten away from really analyzing just war. What does it mean to be just war, to have just war? And I think that's the key to all of this when we start thinking about spreading war around the world. And we can even say that about what's happening with Israel and Gaza. And that's a very good point about just war. And where is the church on this? Where are the hearts of Americans on just war? I don't see anything that's coming out of these more warmongering people that Trump is electing into his cabinet, as well as for Trump's explanation as to how this would be a just war. You're attacking China, but you're now bringing in Iran and Russia to join together because you're causing an unjust war. And already Russia has pointed out that Israel's war with Iran or Lebanon and Gaza are unjust. So we're already have all of this now beginning to happen in the Middle East, and we have issues, and America wants to get on board with all this. So it's insane.
Yeah. Before I go to the abortion one, I'm going to double down on what both of you said. I think this is how the Catholic vote gets corralled. So it's so much emphasis on what we're about to see, and it's very emotional. But yet you're not because it's not just, it's murder. But that is the standard for Catholic morality in the world, and the world order is just. And if you're partaking, and you can call it voting or giving your consciousness over to the narrative, to the script, then you're participating in something just fundamentally unjust. The spectacle has got your morality. And so we've lost sight of just being able to fundamentally ask that really basic philosophical question. Do I want to consent? And I'm talking about even just nod my head, I'm okay with it, or look the other way, through omission or tacit consent. Am I okay with that? Because this is evil. And I won't even talk about the fact that most of this is done unconstitutionally, To avoid these unjust wars, we gave the powers over to the majority, our lawmaking body, because the average person doesn't want war. They have to be always ginned into it every time. And all these, you get the idea. Here we go. Let's do this now.
That's me. I'm Ellie. Don't feel bad. It's okay. It was a long time ago. 1962. I just thought maybe you don't know about me. My parents didn't want me anyway. The doctors worked with scientists, and they took my organs out as soon as I was aborted. It had to be done right away because the organs need to be fresh. It's okay. It wasn't just me. There were 32 of us. They sent our organs to the United States for the experiments. It was my lung they ended up using. Fetal cell line WI38. 38 because that's how much experiments they did on us. Fetal cell lines are used for all kinds of things, like vaccines. Mine was used to make MMR. You probably gave that one to your baby. I was one of the first fetal cell lines, but there's lots more from lots more babies. It's okay. I just thought maybe you haven't heard of us. Hello, I'm David. I was killed a few years after Ellie. It's okay. The doctor said my mom had psychiatric reasons to not want me. My lung made MRC5. 5 because it took 5 babies. Perhaps you had my shots? Rabies, polio, chickenpox. Hat 293 came from me. I'm Joanna. Did you hear about me? They used my cell line just now for the COVID vaccines. Heck, human embryonic kidney. But I wasn't an embryo. I was 3 months gestation. It's okay. No one knows how many babies it took for Heck 293, but there was 293 experiments. So it was a lot of babies. And no pain medication that would ruin the cells. It's okay. I'm Jordan. They used my cell line to help with the COVID vaccines as well. Percy 6. They took my eyes. It's okay. I'm Bo. In 2015, China tried something new for me and 8 other babies. It's called water bag abortion. To keep us alive as long as possible so the organs will be fresh. My lung made the Wolvax 2 cell line. I'm not going to be the last one, though. There's going to be more after me. And me. And me. And me. And me. It's okay. It's okay. We just thought you ought to know.
Experiments were...
All right. I'm going to start with you, Aaron. You sent that to me, and you don't have to get personal, but you know people in your life, and you heard some stories this week, so you've been thinking about it. I have to kind of almost look away when I see that, but I guess I'm overly sensitive in some ways if I don't kind of put my armor on. But I also watch children being killed abroad, which I guess you have to kind of search that out a little bit because our news media doesn't tell us about that. But what were the thoughts? You've probably seen this a couple times now, Aaron.
Well, yeah, I think what keeps coming back is the broader reach of abortion, that people that are vehemently pro-life. And what triggered me on this was Trump coming out and saying that he was going to make insurance available to pay for IVF. And IVF, I was speaking with my family last weekend, and they had no idea what IVF did and how it was achieved. And it's brutal. It's as brutal as any abortion. And in fact, I think it's torturous even, because you essentially have to, you inseminate multiple eggs. So you get 10, 12, however many they can do successfully. And then the doctor goes through and picks the healthiest one or two, and put those in the mother. And then the rest are either frozen or discarded to be used later. If that doesn't work out, then they'll take from the other batch. But life biologically begins at conception, and it's not just for humans, it's for plants, it's for animals, it's for any living creature. That this is not a moral or a philosophical or religious question. It's a biological, scientific question, and no scientist will tell you that it doesn't begin at conception. So this debate is really about, when does personhood start? Where do we assign the values and the rights of life to a person? And you don't have the same rights as a 2-year-old as a grown man does. Rights get given to you as you get older. Right to drive, right to drink, right to vote. All of these things are assigned to you as you get older. Those are just legal rights. But the fundamental question about life is one of personhood. And I think that the problem that we have when we kind of going back to this whole discussion about the simulacrum, about understanding this sort of fake narrative that's out there and how we're controlled by it, it doesn't allow us to look deeper into some of these issues. So it's not just IVF; it's all of this research that's going on. It's everything that we just take for granted. And I've heard the argument with regards specifically to the vaccine. It's like, well, what about driving on roads built by slaves? If you're going down that road, it's you're trying to justify something now with an inconsistency in the past, and it's one of those irrational arguments. And I think people are so quick to try to find a defensive position that they can hide behind, as opposed to just facing the truth of just that one question. What is personhood, and what justifies the life of a child? Using the life of a child for the advancement of people. So, and then there's other examples out there too. It's, you can look at stem cell. Stem cell is one of the most effective treatments for a multitude of illnesses out there. You can have a bum shoulder, a bum hip, a bum knee, a bum back. You can have diseases like MS, all kinds of things like that. Stem cell treatment does wonders for that. And the most effective stem cells are from a healthy baby's umbilical cord. The best stem cells come from a delivered baby who has a healthy mother and is a healthy delivery. The baby's fine. The stem cells from the umbilical cord are the best for stem cell research. When they were using embryonic stem cells, it was the largest debate going on. You remember Christopher Reeve's old Superman wanted to use stem cells to repair his spine. And there was such a great push out there to have that done. But when they found out that it was umbilical cords from healthy delivered babies, living babies, that didn't harm the child, it all went away. It's you can see the demonic in it. It's like you go and get this vaccine that has the life of an aborted child, a child sacrificed to man. I don't understand how the Catholic Church has been so quiet, and they've justified it. And they've the Ethical Commission for I forget the name of the office, but they've said it's okay.
Jackie, before I go to you, just bear in mind, the COVIDian thing was mentioned in there. Everybody went and took it. And again, part of the idea of the book of the apocalypse is things are being unveiled. The revelation is there. And Bishop Schneider, for those people that were kind of tuned into Catholic media, did quietly make the point that this material is in the shot, even though it doesn't need to be, which means there's an agenda. So, and I'm talking about active engaged, so that the other influencers, they didn't say no. Nobody said that. Nobody stood up. And part of what, I started the talk with the other day is that I believe in Catholic prophecy that the church will rise again, but we have to rise on a foundation of moral clarity about issues and connect things that are true here and abroad, because we live in an empire, a world spectacle empire. We're still kind of, the script says, Russia does this and that. We saw over the last 5 years, everybody moved in lockstep. So we saw that when the agenda is supposed to go forward, it can. When they want to have certain tensions manufactured, they can. But Jackie, I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts on this.
Yeah, I have one in particular. But before I give that out, I want to say that I probably have a very strong and emotional attachment to the unborn, seeing that I lost my own child in the womb. And it was a baby boy. So we knew the sex of the child. He was between 16 to 18. I might have been right there in the 17th week. So it had every finger, every little toe. He was a little baby boy. So when I see the video that you showed, it really just hits me how beautiful his little life was. And it pains me to think that they're experimenting on babies that are alive, just so that they can do these experiments to do some kind of greater science to heal people and make things better for society with health benefits. But that's just not the way to go in doing this. Secondly, when the convid garbage came out, I knew that it was tainted with the unborn. And it pained me very, very much. And I went to the father at our church to speak to him about it, and with another friend. And I'll be darned if the priest didn't walk me through some kind of history of how they only used a little taint of the unborn. And it was so long ago, you can't even validate it now. And I was just like, what? So literally, that's where the local priest was, and he was pretty much advocating it, and straight from what the Vatican said we needed to do with it by taking it, or we were not contributing to helping science get through this pandemic. So yeah, I think it's disgusting, and the church is not where it should be.
Yeah. So I just threw up on the screen, I argue on here that we are in the age of deception. And I guess I could put it up here again, that I'm sure people have heard of this idea that's thrown around a lot in the last few years, but that the word pharmakia, which has to do with both pharmacy and sorcery, they're interconnected. And I think there's a demonic connection. And I don't think it's a big stretch when in Catholic theology and our belief system that at conception, a soul is created, and that this tissue then would have that. And then, of course, I don't think this is hyped up. I do think that there's a Moloch ritual. However, it just is by nature. I think just the very action of it is, and so I think we have to be mindful of that. And I think when I talk here about the key part of bringing all this together, the fourth industrial revolution, I've called it in my books on here, the blockchain of becoming versus the blockchain of being, but it's blockchain technology. Under the skin is the critical part of everything. So we've been broken into that, whatever this technology is that helps whoever took it merge with the other people into the blockchain. And then the other piece of that's Noahide. But before we go maybe over back to geopolitics, I have over here, we'll go over to the foreign policy, but I do want to just mention here with the Roe versus Wade that every time I hear this on Catholic media, the big victory, and the judges, and that's why it sends so hard. You have to see that this system of control is very grand. And if you think somehow there's an independent judiciary, I've been watching this, for my career. It's just not, that when you talk about the Masons in every town having the local judge, the local cop, the local city, medical examiner, those are the critical ones you have. So yes, no, that process is not hard to capture at all. And the result of this, when we go fact versus the image, and again, tying the image that Trump, he'll do something with the border, maybe to some extent he will, or maybe they'll do something with the Drug Administration. To some extent they might, but these are tied in together for this agenda. So it does work a little bit this way. But in the age of sorcery, what we have to keep our minds on is the fact versus the image. And the fact is that since the overturning of Roe v. Wade, the numbers are radically up. This was very cleverly devised. The radical polarization between red and blue state, where people now are accepting, and that's a real searing of the consciousness, these late terms. That's just a searing. I know that's all bad, but it's such a searing. And just we saw the viciousness that came out in this demonic displays of people, my body, my choice, even though it was the first time there's ever an election, and that wasn't even any longer an issue. And so it's just a really demonic psychology that was breaking out, but it wasn't a victory. The research is an all-time high. The profits are an all-time high, and the trafficking is at an all-time high. So those are the facts versus he'll put in one of these judges again, because this, in my estimation, was completely designed to overturn Wade, where it was more in balance. Not saying I have a preference for one policy over the other, but that's the facts. There was no victory. But I hear that repeated over and over and over by the same people that won't touch the foreign policy reality. And I'm just trying to hear that we just have to have in our consciousness and pass this consciousness along a moral clarity in the world we live in. And I know people that especially Catholic influencers don't want to touch it. They'll go, oh, that's foreign policy. We can talk about this, meaning that's what you're comfortable with your audience and your base. But I think it's kind of lame, and it's time to open up this conversation a little bit broader. I'm going to hook over and do a little bit more foreign policy. Are you good to go? Okay. Let's do a little bit more here. I hope I got it.
You listen to the statements of Donald Trump's nominees for defense secretary, CIA director, secretary of state, UN ambassador, national security advisor. All of them are pushing for much more aggressive policies against China and eventually war. And although some of Trump's supporters claimed that he was the peace candidate and that if he was elected, he would end war, you have to ignore everything that Trump did during his first term to actually believe that. Because before I show clips of some of Trump's cabinet officials, I want to briefly review his foreign policy record during his first administration. If you look at what he did when he was president, it was not support peace. He expanded multiple wars, including the war in Yemen. He did not withdraw troops from Afghanistan. He boasted of militarily occupying Syria.
And then they say he left troops in Syria. You know what I did? I left troops to take the oil. I took the oil. The only troops I have are taking the oil. They're protecting the oil.
He also maintained an illegal military occupation of Iraq. He assassinated the top Iranian general, Qasem Soleimani, and a top Iraqi military commander. He massively expanded illegal sanctions and economic warfare against Iran, Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua, and other countries. He waged a trade war on China. He massively expanded the new Cold War against China. He backed neo-colonial coup attempts in Venezuela and Nicaragua and Cuba and Bolivia, trying to overthrow their governments. He succeeded in overthrowing Bolivia's democratically elected left-wing government. Donald Trump's foreign policy was extremely interventionist. And his supporters claim that, oh, he didn't start a new war. He started many new wars in terms of economic war, in terms of unconventional war, in terms of trying to overthrow foreign governments. He tried to overthrow the Iranian government. He tried to destabilize China. He backed numerous coup attempts in Latin America. He waged brutal economic war in Venezuela that led to tens of thousands of deaths. By the way, he also sold many weapons to Ukraine, and he boasted that he had sent more weapons to Ukraine that Obama had. He claimed that Obama only sent pillows and sheets to Ukraine.
I don't understand.
You don't know what I talked about with Putin in the meeting prior to the press conference?
Publicly. You never say anything harsh
Excuse
about him
me,
publicly.
I didn't. I'm the one that gave Ukraine offensive weapons and tank killers. Obama didn't. You know what he sent? He sent pillows and blankets.
And Donald Trump also tore up 2 different arms deals that the U.S. had previously signed with Russia, which is what made the proxy war in Ukraine much more likely. So Donald Trump in his first term was already a warmongering president, like Obama, like Biden and Harris. I mean, this is completely bipartisan. It's not like Trump is unique. But the point to emphasize is that Donald Trump is not an alternative. His populist rhetoric, claiming he's going to end the wars, is just cynical rhetoric to try to get votes. And it worked. A lot of people believed it, but it was false. Look at the people Donald Trump has surrounded himself. They are.
Okay, we'll leave it there for a moment. Like, look at the facts instead of the image, and instead of the hype, instead of having Elon upstate. And again, with Elon, look at everything about his life is fake. He, every company he essentially started, it's not hard. It doesn't take a hard examination to see that he's just a front for the military-industrial complex. But the shiny thing is what people are attracted about, and they're in the loop because when you watch the popular media, keep your eye on the shiny object up here. But I have an idea about this. I do want to go around the horn. I don't want to talk too much. But when I see geopolitics, wars, it's a problem, reaction, solution. You're always going to see what's the new order that comes out of it. And a lot of wars, I'm not saying people don't die, people aren't hurt, but there's a lot of shifting and geopolitical maneuvering that goes on from the inside, and a lot of skullduggery, frankly. And so where are they going with all this? Like, if they want to wage this, and to varying extents, they're kind of situating this and manufacturing it to some extent. We got to be open to that. Where are they going with this? So they have to, I believe, I'll go around the horn here. I have more ideas on this. They're scrambling up some eggs to make an omelet. And the result of World War II, when you came in, it crushed Germany, created the United Nations, created the World Bank, the IMF, the World Trade Agreement, and the State of Israel. If you came in with that objective, you just had to tweak it around a little bit to end up with that within 4 years after the closure of the war, and an enter into the Cold War age, which I was argued was actually, I know if you're new at this, this is kind of hard to hear, but the Cold War was largely a setup. This bipolar world to get other objectives done over this 40 or 50 year period. But I'll go ahead because you have to see what's going on. Why would you do something so crazy like try to get in, unless you wanted to crush, like we're going to be the new Germany, right? And get crushed, and a new order that's going to come out of this. And again, I'm sorry if I'm talking too much. In international theory, all new world orders come from the dominant hegemonic power, goes face to face. It's usually it can be on a land battlefield, but oftentimes it's a sea war. And the outcome of this decisive victory, whether we're talking about between Spain and Holland and England, that's the new hegemon that's going to come out of this. But it looks like they don't want a decisive hegemon as maybe we've done it in the past. But I'm going to really shush up about this, because the next clips, if you haven't seen these floating around, when you actually listen to how nutty these people are. So we're going to get into that in the next clips. But Aaron, I've talked too much here. What do you got?
So the thing that I like was reflecting on today when I was having this conversation with this friend of mine is, do you have to know all this to be able to break away from it? Like, do you have to go into the detail of these, like what this podcaster was showing, how do you get to a place where you can detach, not know all of these details? How do you get to a place where you can understand that Elon Musk is not a friendly actor, that these people are doing what they're doing? Do you have to become an expert on China's foreign policy and the trade problems and the Straits of Taiwan, or it's like what how much do you have to know before you can go, no, that's wrong, because they flood you with so much information. So one of the things that I've been trying to work out in my head is, how do you break this stuff down, Barney style? If you're a farmer, if you're working hard every day to provide for your family, and you're doing the things in accord with your station in life, how do you keep yourself from getting sucked into this? What are the basic questions that you have to answer? Because when you talk to an old dude who's like a serious guy, somebody who, hard worker, you go out to these farms, you go out to these guys that are hardcore mechanics, especially up in the country, and they're simple dudes, they'll break it down quick, they'll break it down real quick. And they don't know these things, but they can get to the root of things. And because they understand what things cost them, and they don't want to lose their kid to some war in a place they've never heard of. Some of them get sucked up, but the thing is that those who are really really focusing on the news, they get brought into it. The people who are just worried about making a living and keeping their business going against ever increasing odds that I'm sure are not accidental. How do you break it down to a very simple level where you can ask very, direct questions about these things and realize, no, this is the wrong direction? Because you just can't. I can't spend the amount of time I want to figure all of that out.
Jackie, I'm going to ask you. Aaron and I talk about this a lot. So if I'm talking to my mother, of course she voted and she thinks not doing it's the weirdest thing, and I think it's somewhat, I understand it. And most people go with the flow and most people are sheep, and that's just how the world is. But, her deflection is not everybody can be like you and spend all the time on the computer and know all these things. And how did the sweet little lady in church, the old lady, go for the shot? How did they deceive anybody? Because she's a good, holy woman, but yet she was deceived. And it's a tricky issue, Jackie. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I definitely think that they really mastered how to get the sweet and innocent and faithful person into the spectacle. And I will say that I'm around a lot of them, and I see how they literally captivate them. And I have a real problem because they don't want to listen to me at all. And I'm younger, but I think for me, it just came down to like common sense in looking at things and saying, this is not just, this is not right, this is not. And then I began to start looking at things so differently. And the convid thing, I'm calling it the convid, you know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. That really opened my eyes. When I saw this image that everybody had for Trump being this great man who had an understanding of foreign policy and things going on in the world, and everyone had that same attitude about Trump as they do now. But when I saw him like almost his butt kicked to the back of the room and Fauci in front and his VP taking over, I'm like, something weird is going on here. And that was like the beginning of my mind opening up, that I feel like I'm in some kind of a movie and this is not real. And that's what woke me up. And then I began to look for things on my own and come to my own understanding about stuff. So I don't know what the answer is for a lot of these good and innocent, faithful people, because they're just getting caught up in it. And I see how they do it, but how to help them, I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I really went into it seriously when I would look at church and really nice people that just bought into this. Or what the person sitting on the chair of Peter would say, which is vicious. So that's really hard to fight that if you're trying to be a good Catholic and you've been trained to like listen to that. That's just a tricky situation. But I think one of the things is knowing the time. The merchants of the world, in order to make profit and comfort, they all drank. And do you want to drink of the wine? That's, you can see them. Are they involved in? Now, that doesn't mean every king of all time, but when we get into those times and those seasons. And so, but there has been more of a obvious things don't add up. There was lies. I absolutely can't understand that. But okay, so I don't know all the answers. But what I do know, we were told that a lot of people at the end times are going to be deceived. A lot of good people, a lot of good priests. And St. Vincent Ferrer emphasizes that. One thing I will say is I think like if you're I'm friends with that I take care of a widow, and she's around the house all day. She flips on the TV. She gets bored, and it just hypnotizes you. You don't know that. And, she can't just sit there and read her Bible all day. I kind of get that. And she doesn't know how to search the internet, and she doesn't. Yeah. But then again, there's another side of me that also says she could be digging. And if she, that's what that says. Do you love the truth? Are you willing to pay a price? There's some pain to look into truth philosophically and theologically. There is. But I try to be, compassionate and charitable about that. But I mean, that's how God structured the world at the end times. Most people would be deceived. And I don't think, not everybody, including non-Christians, I don't think everybody's just raging with demonic sin in a kind of a demonstrable way. But right. Yes, the level of sin that's in the subtle, that we have seared our consciousness to looking at death domestically, at the issues we're brought about. And if people like that video that we just saw, like I think some people that are so pro-life, my body, just can't look at a video like that we just said, that little baby, they think it's just manipulative. But it's the same thing if we were exposed to these things with children for no good reason, that there's some psychopathic soldier out there that kills a 4-year-old and high fives the guy next to him because they're less than human. That's kind of sick too. But we have to, I believe, just kind of have this kind of conversation, and they are tricky concepts. Jackie, go ahead.
I do think we have to understand, like what you're saying here is there are people that just can't wrap their head around that kind of sadistic idea. They have it in their hearts that they can't go there. No, that's not possible. So I do understand that. Yeah, I do.
Yeah, they just don't see the evil in the world. So when they look at that's because it's celebrity culture, celebrity chefs, celebrity politicians, celebrity internet gurus. And so it's a world of celebrity, and they have been dazzled by that. Yesterday, the plumber came to my house, and I made a joke. Soon they'll have shows with a celebrity plumber in them.
Exactly.
They're all mouth foaming war hawks. And I'm going to show some clips today and some articles and tweets and statements by these neocons that Trump has appointed. And you will see that there is basically no difference between Trump's foreign policy and the foreign policy of the neocons who came before him. So now let's talk about Donald Trump's nominee for National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz. He's a complete neocon. In this clip, he says that China, Russia, and Iran are the big enemies of the U.S., and they're trying to replace the U.S. global dictatorship, the U.S. superpower that tries to control the entire world. And he, of course, sees this as a very bad thing.
Our adversaries are openly on the march to try to replace the United States and the Western-led order in along the lines of our values, open markets, free press, basic democracy, with their world order. And Chairman Xi of the Chinese Communist Party said it to Putin in their first gathering. He said, this is a moment of maximum opportunity that we haven't had in 100 years. And what he was talking about is the weakness shown in this White House from 4 years ago to now under President Trump, because he understood how to project strength. He understood deterrence. And most of all, he understood that our economy is our biggest and most forceful weapon and force for
100%.
leverage. And if he would simply flood the world with cheap oil and gas, American oil and gas, because right now we have an LNG ban in place. You drive down those prices, you bankrupt Russia and Iran for that matter, and you dry up their war machine. But instead, Biden just wants to throw billions and billions of more weapons that our military needs as we try to deal with China into an endless situation.
That is the neocon that Trump picked to be his national security advisor. Mike Waltz has the exact same worldview as John Bolton, who was previously Trump's national security advisor in his first administration. There's basically no difference between Mike Waltz and John Bolton. He's not only against China, he's actually also against Russia. He says that he wants the U.S. to flood the global oil market in order to bankrupt Russia and Iran, which are major oil producers. And then he says that the U.S. should stop sending weapons to Ukraine because we need those weapons to wage war on China. So again, total neocon. No difference whatsoever between Trump and George Bush, or for that matter, between Trump and Biden. The neocons remain firmly in charge. Trump is no different whatsoever, despite his so-called populist rhetoric. Here's another example of an insane mouth-foaming conspiracy from this neocon Mike Waltz, in which he claims, without any evidence, it's completely false. He claims that China and Iran are working with Mexican drug cartels. Totally false. Listen to this insanity on Fox News.
These cartels now are connecting with our foreign adversaries and acting as proxies.
That is
the Iranians are working with them for assassination attempts, and I think most significantly are working with the Chinese Communist Party, who we know the Chinese know that these precursor chemicals are coming to certain ports in Mexico and are killing hundreds of thousands of Americans to weaken our inner cities, weaken middle America, and they're essentially acting as proxies for our greatest adversary. We've got to take it on. President Trump will do that.
Okay. So before I continue, because there's just a little bit left and you're getting the idea, that prostitute gal there, just like, oh, I'm so upset. And if anybody if you're kind of have been around, seen a few of these rodeos, how they just manufacture these babies in incubator stories, and how people can get sucked back into it again after what's going on over the last 5 years, how anybody could have any trust in these politicians or the medical industry when they're obviously making points for their own profit is beyond me. And again, when we think about this age of deception, how are people, yes, we know it. I mean, the school system and the dumbed down and the electronics and zombie nation, but this is where we're at. Did you get any impressions, Aaron, when you were listening to that last one?
Yeah, I'm going to pass because I'm going to go back to something else. So I'll.
Okay, Jackie.
Yeah, I just think they're building more and more garbage for us for people to buy into. They're just building it, and it just doesn't even make any sense. I don't understand it, why they want to build this use these scare tactics, the spear. It's just making people feel that they have to be in fear and that the government's going to take over and help us through all this, that they've got the answers. It's just another psyop to build, if you ask me.
There's no way this, historically speaking, this is not going to end well. When this kind of rhetoric, and part of it is this deformation of human consciousness. When you just do these multiple things at once, and you're just breaking down the country. But I think it's really the goal here, because I think everybody's still kind of imagining these independent sovereign powers, but the goal here is to crush America, and nobody can quite see that. And the irony is that the left's never liked war, except until lately they've been trained to, I guess. They look the other way.
Yeah.
But the right now doesn't really want it. And I'm going to show you, I'm going to clip ahead because he's showing so many of these other hawks, but I think you get the point. There's this one guy that just takes the cake here. So I want to get to him. And even just notice this, even when he's talking to the Fox News crew, they're even looking at him like, oh my goodness, dude, what's up? So, and okay, so here we go.
qualification for Trump is that he was a Fox News pundit, and now he's going to be made head of the U.S. military, head of the Pentagon. Here is a clip of the future defense secretary on Fox News arguing that the U.S. has to break the partnership between China and Russia. And this is really going to be one of the main points of the Trump administration's foreign policy, is to try to woo Russia and put a wedge between Beijing and Moscow so the U.S. can try to isolate China to wage war on China. Here he is on Fox News hinting at that.
You got two really ambitious individuals here that lead two very powerful civilizations who want the future to be theirs, but they have one immovable object in front of them, and that's the United States of America. So do they try to fight against us independently, or do they slowly but surely start to come together to get rid of the West so that they can then figure out who's in charge in the future?
And that's why we're having this conversation, because that's what we've seen as of late, them coming together in opposition to the United States.
In another crazy Fox News segment, this neocon whom Trump appointed to be defense secretary, Pete Hegseth, he called on Trump during his first administration to bomb Iran. And he said that the U.S. should not only bomb military targets, he said that Trump should bomb Iranian cultural sites. And he said at the same time, so he's calling for Trump to target Iranian civilian areas. And then he also said that the U.S. should rewrite international law, rewrite the rules of war in order to be advantageous to us. This is the definition of neoconservatism. It's ignoring international law, waging wars around the world, trying to rewrite the rules of the game in order to benefit the U.S. empire in the name of spreading so-called freedom and democracy, overthrowing foreign governments, including overthrowing elected governments abroad. This is the same neoconservative status quo that Donald Trump has once again continued.
None of this, though, changes the calculation of this regime, which is an evil regime. So when I hear talk about, well, now it's time to get back to the table and talk, I say they need to come back to the table for talks on their nuclear capabilities. They need to come back limping and begging, not seething. I happen to believe that we can't kick the can down the road any longer in trying to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear bomb. So what better time than now to say, we're starting the clock. You've got a week. You've got X amount of time before we start taking out your energy production facilities. We take out key infrastructure. We take out your missile sites. We take out nuclear development. We take out popular capabilities. Or, you know, take out a Quds headquarters while you're at it if you want. I understand that's not a popular idea. I don't want boots on the ground. I don't want occupation. I don't want endless war. But Iran has been in an endless war with us for 40 years. Either we put up and shut up now and stop it, or we kind of wait, go back to the table and let them dither while they attempt to continue to develop the capabilities to do precisely what they've said they want to do. So either we're on.
Okay. I think you got the idea. Just like, I mean, triggering World War III, how else can you interpret that? Aaron, do you want to jump in this time?
Yeah, the fact that people accept these explanations, you know, from the previous one, like they're bringing in all these chemicals in the ports of Mexico and they're hiding missiles and ammunition and whatever in these baby milk factories and these cultural sites. I mean, they tell you that that's happening, but is it? You know, all of this stuff is fed to us, and I think about how we watch this stuff, this, you know, evidence given to us, like clear evidence that all of these different people from around the world are coming across the Darien Gap down in South America and moving their way up into America. We've got millions of people from all over the world that are all military-age males. We have all of this data that's actually proven and given to us, but they're not talking about that. They're talking about a port in Mexico where something is coming in, or where bombs and nuclear material is hidden in cultural sites in Iran. No evidence is provided, just the fact given, and we accept it. And I think about, like, you know, so I was in Desert Storm, and that was my first little rodeo. And then, you know, the baby milk factory, we had baby milk factories, but we also had, you know, the babies in incubators. turned out to be totally false. I mean, we came over there and we absolutely hated these. We were like, oh, these guys are terrible. And they're not nice. I mean, the stuff you see on videos and my cameras, what these guys are doing in the field to donkeys. I mean, it's a disgusting culture, you know, there's no excuse for these people, but it's like, you know, this notion that we've got to go out and take all of this action on behalf of who are we taking this action on behalf of? And, you know, that never fails, you know, follow the money, but, you know, it goes back to this question. It's like, how much do you have to know to be able to say no, you know?
I think none of this makes sense until, you know, when I watch a lot of, and Jackie and I have been sharing a lot of stuff about geopolitics, until you put it through a biblical lens and typology, that you're preparing the world for, you know, this temple, and that actually you have to have another sacrifice of those people. And that's why I think there's a new kind of externalization to actually target something you could never say more than a week ago is now being able to be said. So they want, it's a controlled revelation and a controlled demolition in order for a controlled reordering. And it's hard to see all the parts, but you see where they're ultimately going, what I call the earthly Jerusalem, and they want people caught up in that egregore. Instead of keeping our eyes on our Catholic faith and our beliefs like just war, they want us to be immunized into this, you know, this left-right kind of thing, into the show, into the drama. And it's hard. I mean, when people are talking, we're going to bombard China over here and Russia over here and Ukraine over here, and they're spending your children and grandchildren's money, and, you know, like we're 50, you can't keep track, $50 trillion in debt. We're going to go on multiple, it's this the level of insanity. And I think that is part of the agenda, is just really the debilitation of human consciousness, so that you don't know, like the people of Nineveh, your right hand from your left. And Jackie and I over on locals, and I don't know if we're about done here. If we're going to decide if we're going to go over on locals, I think we're all pretty tired. But we've been doing this over on locals and putting this together in biblical typology because it works. The modus operandi of the serpent works perfectly. And Jackie, where do you want to go?
Well, I'm just going to say, I don't know how anybody could listen to Pete Hegseth and not see that he's an angry, warmongering person here and agree with him for anything. I mean, you got to have some sense to be able to look at that and say that this is not normal. And I heard that Judge Napolitano said that they are almost rethinking him for his position. And that came over the wire during one of his videos. It was like opening news that they're rethinking about Pete. And it's probably due to some of the things he said, because there's other videos of him where he is just screaming for war. And that to me just doesn't make any sense. And I don't know how anyone could listen to him and not believe there's something wrong with him.
So again, where we're going is this is what you do psychologically, right? You link different behaviors or different likes. So as we're getting exuberant about the Musk technology or the Department of Efficiency, or someone's going to look at the FDA and look at our food, and we're looking at this kind of progress, we're getting dazzled by it. And we're somehow supposed to link this with an excitement about sealing our borders, with an excitement just about war that makes absolutely no sense. Aaron, what do you make of this guy's tats?
Well, is he Catholic?
I don't know.
Been wanting to look that up.
I do not know. I just assumed he's like, I mean, that would be terrible. I just assumed. Yeah. I think he's so far gone. I think he's like an MK Ultra dude or something. This guy's such a loose cannon nut job, crackhead type dude. I don't know.
Yeah, he's a perfect example. I mean, when you think about somebody like with the Secretary of Defense, I mean, this guy is a major or a lieutenant colonel in the Army Guard. I mean, and it's like, you know, he's done some deployments over there, but he's not like this, you know, hardcore snake eater that's, you know, been involved heavily in the Defense Department. I mean, the DOD, I mean, the Secretary of Defense, this is like, you can't get a more, like, their Secretary of State and the Secretary of Defense. I mean, those guys, we're talking billions of dollars and just the things that they do. their power base is just enormous, and this guy is literally an actor, and so
Literally.
you see him come in there, and it's just, it's silly. It's just silly. That's all it is. But I wanted to, the one thought that I had, one thing that I've been trying to work out, in the state of Florida, they had amendments 4 and 3 that they tried to pass. And it's crazy enough, you can pass an amendment to the Constitution to the state of Florida with a 60% vote, which is ridiculous. 10% over majority, you can get the Constitution changed. So Amendment 4 was to basically legalize abortion in the state up to whatever you wanted. And the other was to legalize marijuana. And they both failed, which I was surprised about marijuana. But it only failed because 57% of the Floridians voted for Amendment 4. So they voted to include abortion, and 48 voted against it. I don't know. Anyway, or no, it's 43. I'm sorry. 43, only 43% voted against it. So when I think about political activism, I think possibly an answer that I can get to is that if it deals with evangelization, so if you're not necessarily fighting on the political front, you're fighting on the evangelical front. So as an example, with this abortion question, what can you do to raise awareness and consciousness around your state, around your community, to bring people in on this, to let them understand not just about abortion, but IVF and the other things that are going on with fetal tissue research, and just that, to bring the question forward about personhood. Expand that to any other political question. So if it's dealing with economics and things like that, not so much. But if you're talking about our support for Israel and you're defending the church's position on one covenant, and that the new Israel is the church, you're evangelizing, but you're also dealing with politics. So I think it's possible to enter into the conversation under that banner to help someone grow in their faith, to grow in your own faith and understanding of these issues that are out there. But ultimately, what you're doing, and I think this is why it's possibly a good idea, is that you're breaking people away from this fake reality, the simulacrum, and you're bringing them to the truth. And if you're talking about truth, then you're talking about God.
Yeah. Aaron, that really, here's what I'm going to say about that. First of all, I think being able to recognize whether we're talking about politics or the quote unquote free market, being able to separate the micro and the macro. And so what I would say is part of detaching is that you need to have an engaged detachment. It's consistent with our theology in the Catholic lives. We don't completely, that's Gnostic, just to check me out, beam me up, Scotty, that's Gnostic, right? So we have to be able to know when to pick our battles. And I think just like the free market, it's not free in the sense that it is crony capitalism, it is monopoly capitalism, but for it to appear real, and that's the kayfabe reality, of course, free markets work to some extent. You go to a store and some things of higher quality are more money. Somebody, it has more labor value is going to have more. So, I mean, there are realities to a market at varying extents being free, but at the same time, it's ultimately controlled and can be driven in a direction. So we have to be able to understand the different economies of means, or the micro macro, and again with politics. And I believe with politics, some of those things are let to be completely free at state and local levels. When they desire to be, more captured, it will be. But I have no doubt, like those referendums, if that's what they were what they were. And so I've never heard anybody out there that would say, don't get involved in local communities, in local politics to the extent that you really matter. And that's part of this idea of connecting the foreign policy with the intimate policy. We have to be aware of these in order, fundamentally, when we do act, we have double-mindedness about issues like death, because however we act, we're going to be doing it in a fashion that's double-minded. So we want to be clear about that we're consistent with what death is and how we could stand for it morally and fundamentally as individuals with a worldview, and then how to have, again, I would say this, engaged detachment, that we're not kind of swept up. Why the shiny objects? We don't take the image over the fact, or that we have to walk, as we would say, in the word or the revelation and stand firm. And, that's kind of my thought for the day. And I'm going to let you wrap it up, Jackie.
Yeah, I'd have to find the video and try to get it to you, but there was a Catholic YouTube video that I watched shortly after the election, and I found this very interesting, that he looked at all the different states and how much abortion went up in every state, where everybody was voting for Trump, that abortion, on the ticket, that he would be, against abortion. But they found that locally in almost all the states, it went up, that people actually voted for abortion. This guy did an excellent take on this. So I'll have to see if I can find it or send it to you. So, because I found that very interesting. But I just think truly on all the issues politically, on life and being able to share, is to get back to the understanding of the faith. I think so many have walked away from really focusing on their faith, on prayer, and what God is really looking from all of us, who he really is, and what matters. And that's why I really put in the typology and wanted us to do that segment where we're really bringing people back to looking at the word of God, because it's as if people don't even really know who he is and what we should be standing for and believing as true faithful people. And that's where we're getting caught up in the confusion, and we're allowing the politics and the news and the media and entertainment and everything to sway our minds into a just consciousness of doubt, because we're not interpreting the word anymore properly in our minds and connected to the kingship of Christ and the works of the Holy Spirit, being able to really understand what the works of the Holy Spirit are, the gifts that we were given, so that we would be able to live in this world and make the good decisions that are based on goodness and love that our Father in heaven wants us to live.
That's what St. Vincent Ferrer would say. And again, he was the angel of the apocalypse. He proved this 2 or maybe 3 times, but 2 times for sure. He raised people from the dead in public, just specifically when people challenged that. And he said about these times, people should be having God and scripture, number one. Instead, they're going to have the profane. That means the secular, the worldly, the vanities, the show, and that will take precedent. We can say the celebrity culture takes precedent. I had a conversation on Locals a while back. Skippy was saying, for Catholics, sometimes we'll believe, there's a miracle on Sunday morning, and that we don't live with that sense of just the mystery. But I think we have to prepare ourselves, just as we prepare ourselves for the Eucharist. We have to be, as you say, it's all about the body. We have to be preparing our bodies, including our consciousness, each day. And I think we really have to be spiritual combat, and the breastplate and the helmet. So when you see the spectacle, when you see the shows, and they lie, and that they'll say anything for money, why get trapped into it? And I do think you can watch it to some extent, just like television to some extent. But once you get like a passive, the alpha wave thing, when you sit in front of the boob tube, it's got you and it'll take you over. It's just like a poison. And I do think that there's a strong demonic element. Mr. Aaron, I'll let you actually do the last word and I'll shut up. You got anything?
Yeah, going again, that's just the theme we're finishing with. Where are you at in your spiritual life? If you're so concerned about these things out there, how many rosaries are you up to today? Are you able to make it to daily mass and don't? Are you integrating fasting into your life? Are you doing your duty in accord with your station in life with devotion? How much is your mind recollected to God throughout the day? How are you habituating yourself to a life of prayer? Not something that happens occasionally, but throughout the day. How does your mind go back to God? So I think if we like you said, it's better. And I took that to heart. I stepped away from this election. I stepped away and I said, I'm not going to get caught up in it. And you might miss one like I did, but in that time, my social media consumption has gone down dramatically. I go to bed without YouTube. I wake up without YouTube. I travel without YouTube. I'm rosaries in my truck as opposed to listening to someone's opinion. And throughout all of that, when I've come to the other side, when I have these conversations about the political question, the answers are there. You know, I'm in a much better place emotionally, spiritually. I don't get upset. I don't get, I don't care. It's easy to speak truth because more and more my mind is recollected to God, and not all the time. It's still going, but I can't do that if I'm worried too much about how I'm going to answer a question when someone asks me something. Just let God do it.
Yeah. So I guess we're going to wrap it up. Last week, Aaron, you said something about on Saturdays doing a rosary in the cemetery. So I did a second one today, and I did that, and I found it very interesting, very moving, and I was really able to get outside myself. And it really, if somebody hasn't tried that, I'm going to continue to do that. It's hard to explain. Something very definitely happened with that. So for everybody in the chat, I just, for some reason, between the videos, I just wanted to engage everybody today on here. So I wasn't able to see you all. I could see out of the corner of my eye, there's some activity over here. I just want to thank everybody in the chat. So this has been our Saturday night live segment with our special guests, Jackie and Aaron. I will leave a link to Locals because we've been putting all kinds of content over there to dig into all these topics. So I'll make that available. And thank you, everybody. And have a blessed week.